September was a really weird month for me, and I definitely was in a reading slump, which I haven't been in a reading slump in a while. I just didn't feel like reading at all. Regardless, I still wanted to share the books that I read this month. You guys are going to have to bear with me because September has definitely been a blur. Some of these books, I don't even remember reading them or what I thought about them. I'm definitely going to have to reach far down into my memory to remember what I thought about these books because I haven't even updated my Goodreads account, so just bear with me. Let's start with Miss Colleen Hoover because I did read 3 of her books. One of the books that I read from Miss Colleen Hoover was Maybe Someday. This is basically about a college student who gets cheated on by her boyfriend, and her whole life, her whole world is turned upside down. She finds herself without a place to live. She doesn't want to tell her family because her family doesn't agree with her choice of education. In the midst of all this, she meets her neighbor, Ridge, who offers her a room in his apartment. He's like, you can crash at my place for as long as you need. Don't worry about it. It's totally fine. He has other roommates as well, so it's not strange at all. And through them rooming together, sparks fly and things happen between them that shouldn't really happen. I don't want to give too much away in case you haven't read this book. Let's just say that things happen between them that should never happen in a real friendship or relationship, which is why this is probably my least favorite Colleen Hoover book. I would really hate for this book to be the first book that someone reads by Colleen Hoover because I think it sends a wrong message on relationships and friendships. And if this is the first book that you read by Colleen Hoover, you may think or assume that her other books are exactly the same, which they're not. I just didn't really agree with the main characters' decisions, the way they handled their friendship, the way they handled their relationship. In their head, they thought that they were handling it in a super mature way, but as an outsider, you can clearly see where they went wrong, especially if you've been in a relationship before and you know your own boundaries in said relationship. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It definitely wasn't for me, and I don't think I would sit here and recommend this book to you guys. I feel like I started this reading wrap up on a bad note. I am so sorry. I feel like Colleen Hoover has so many other good books that you can read and absolutely love. Ignore that Colleen Hoover ever wrote this book and read some of her other books like Ugly Love, Verity, or the other 2 that I'm about to mention. The next book that I read by the Queen was Without Merit. This book is basically about a girl named Merit who has a very dysfunctional family. Like, her family needs serious therapy, but they all have secrets that Merit feels like she's obligated to keep, and she's the only one in the family that knows everyone's secrets, and she feels like she has to keep those secrets to herself, and they start to wear her down until she learns one final secret where she's like, all right, I've had enough, I can't keep doing this, and she basically explodes and forces her family to recognize their issues and to recognize that they need help in order to heal. This book is really heavy. Definitely look up the triggers beforehand. It's definitely not for everyone. I really enjoyed this book. I didn't really like the characters in this book except for Sagan. They kind of grew on me towards the end, but throughout the entire book, I was side-eyeing everyone, including Merit. Sagan was the only character that I actually loved in this book. He was just so wholesome. This book was also very addicting. I did not want to put it down. I wanted to keep reading to see if Merit's family eventually got their shit together. My heart definitely broke for Merit though. I definitely feel like her family put her in an impossible situation, and this book just shows how important communication is and how important it is to sometimes take a step back and realize that not everything is about you, and to try to put yourself in another person's shoes, to try to see their own perspective, and to try to understand why they have made the decisions that they have made, even if you don't agree with said decisions. Taking a step back and being able to see their perspective is really important, and that's something that can be applied in your everyday life. So I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I definitely would recommend this book, but again, just look up the triggers because this book is definitely not for everyone. everyone. This next Colleen Hoover book I technically haven't finished yet. I definitely need to finish it in October, but I'm still going to include it because I did get far enough into the book where I can form an opinion. Just keep in mind that this isn't my final opinion because I haven't read the ending. But the next book that I read by Colleen Hoover was All Your Perfects. This is a very short book. There's only like 306 pages. I just haven't finished it. I'm like halfway done with the book. This book follows a married couple who is currently struggling in their marriage. Their marriage is literally breaking down in front of their eyes, and it goes from the past to the present. So you get to see how they met, how they fell in love, and then you go back to the present where they're trying to figure out how to save their marriage because again, it's literally falling apart. I think this is a more mature book by Colleen Hoover. I definitely don't think it's for everyone. I also think that it can be triggering because it does talk about infertility. So if that's something that you're going through currently or have gone through in the past, this book may not be for you because it's literally the main topic of the book. I haven't finished it mainly because I'm in a reading slump and I just haven't been in the mood to finish it, but it has nothing to do with the book itself. I've really enjoyed what I've read so far. My only complaint with this book is that I wish there was a bit more communication between the main characters in their present day marriage. I feel like a lot of the problems could have been avoided had they openly communicated with one another and been honest and upfront about their feelings. I believe that communication is key in any relationship, but specifically a marriage. If you can't communicate with your partner, your marriage is going to fall apart. Like, you can't assume that your partner is going to guess or figure out what's wrong with you all the time because that's just not going to happen. So I do wish, again, that there was a bit more communication going on between the two characters. But with that being said, I still have been enjoying reading it. I just need to finish it one of these days. Moving on, the next book that I read was Bully by Penelope Douglas. This book follows a high school student named Tate who is bullied by her former best friend Jared. I think Jared was his name. I don't really remember. Jared and Tate used to be best friends when they were kids, but after one summer, their friendship completely broke apart and Jared actually started to bully Tate very harshly. Now they're in high school and the bullying has gotten so bad that Tate actually had to go away for an entire year to not have to deal with Jared's bullying. I don't really like this concept, and when I picked up this book, I had a feeling that I was not going to enjoy that storyline, but I decided to give the book a chance. I read it. It definitely was addicting. It kind of reminded me of a Colleen Hoover book in that way where I didn't want to put this book down. Like, I wanted to continue reading to figure out what was going to happen, but I didn't really like the concept of Jared bullying Tate because it wasn't cute teasing like in a flirty way. It was full-on bullying where he would constantly make Tate cry and embarrass her in front of her entire high school class, and to me that's just not okay. How can you bully someone like that and then turn around and be like, just kidding, I've loved you since we were kids. Are we in kindergarten right now? I'll be like, excuse me, boy, bye. Like, no, unacceptable. For that reason, I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I don't know if I would really recommend this book because again, I just didn't like the storyline. I didn't really like Jared, the main male character. Tate kind of annoyed me at times as well. I found her to be kind of a hypocrite sometimes. So not my fave, but with that being said, I definitely would give Penelope Douglas a chance. I definitely want to read some of her other books to see if I like them because I did like the writing. Again, I found the writing to be very addicting. I just wasn't a fan of the storylines. The next book that I read in September was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This book follows a romance ghostwriter who is struggling to write her next book because she recently went through a very bad breakup and she no longer believes in love. Because of this, she goes to her editor and begs him for a extension on her next novel. He declines. He says no and tells her that he expects the romance book to be in by the agreed deadline. But then she receives a call from her family that her dad has passed away suddenly, so she flies back to her small town, which she has avoided for the past, I think, 10 years. A few days after she arrives and is spending time with her family, her editor shows up in ghost form and she has to figure out why he's there and help him with any unresolved issues he may have so he can ultimately move on. Through that process, she realizes that love is in fact not dead anymore and she starts falling for her editor, but unfortunately he is a ghost. When I read the synopsis on this book, I thought it was very interesting. I haven't really read any other book with this storyline, so I thought it would be really fun. It's also a romantic comedy, which you guys know I love a good rom-com. I actually really enjoyed this book and I definitely would recommend it. It's very funny at times, it's very sad in other times, but I just think it has so many important messages in it as well regarding love, grief, moving on, accepting yourself for the way that you are, forgiveness. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's not a very long book and it goes by super fast, and I think it would be a good book to read in the fall because it deals with ghosts, and I just think it sets the tone for spooky season, even though this book is not scary at all. So if you're afraid of ghosts, don't worry, you're not going to be spooked while reading this. Very wholesome, very cute, and very funny. The next book that I read was The Axe Hacks by Erin Sterling. This book follows a witch who cursed her ex-boyfriend because he broke her heart, but the thing is, she didn't actually know that her curse worked until 9 years passed and her ex-boyfriend has to come back into their small town and things start to go wrong. Magic no longer works the same. Whenever the witches in the town try to do a spell, it completely backfires. So in order to save her town and break the curse that she caused, she has to partner up with her ex-boyfriend. I enjoyed reading this book so much. I think it's the perfect book to read in the fall, specifically in October, because it has witches, it has ghosts, it even has a talking cat. The fall vibes are just immaculate in this book, so definitely read this book in October if you haven't read it yet, because I just feel like it has all the spooky vibes that you need without being scary. It's very lighthearted, so if you are not really into horror books but you want to read a book that has like really nice fall vibes, definitely check out The Axe Hacks. And I just really enjoyed all of the characters. They were all so fun, even the side characters. One thing to note is that this book is quite spicy towards the end of the book. I wasn't expecting it to have any spice at all. For some reason I thought that this book was YA, and it's definitely not YA, but it's not heavily spiced. Like the spiciness happens again towards the end of the book, and you can always just skip those scenes if that is not your thing, because I definitely think it's a very enjoyable read. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, mainly because I really just wasn't invested in the two main characters' love story. Even though I enjoyed them separately and I thought that their characters were actually pretty funny, I just didn't see myself rooting for their relationship. If I had liked their relationship a little bit more and I felt like they had a little bit more chemistry, then I probably would have given it a higher rating, like a 4 stars. But I definitely would recommend this book, and you guys should check it out in October. The next book that I want to talk about was definitely a disappointing book for me. My expectations for this book were so high and I was just let down completely. If you watched my last book sleepover vlog, and then you already know my thoughts on this book. But the book is The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the 3rd book in the Inheritance Game series. It actually came out at the end of August. I was so excited I didn't even want to wait for the paperback version to be released. I just went ahead and bought the hardcover version, but this definitely was such a disappointment for me. I didn't really like the storyline. I thought that the storyline was actually kind of boring. I felt like there wasn't really all that many puzzles and mysteries to figure out. I really enjoyed the 2nd book in the series the best because I felt like it had a lot of mysteries and a lot of puzzles that not only involved the main character Avery but involved the entire Hawthorne family. And for this book, I just felt like the mystery was, I don't know, it was just such a letdown, and when they finally solved everything, it just felt super quick, and I felt like Avery solved the final puzzle hella fast when that should have been the hardest puzzle to beat. I feel like this book really shouldn't have been written, if I'm being honest. I am bashing this book right now. Trust me, I loved the first 2 books in the series, and that is why this book was such a disappointment for me. I feel like it doesn't really add anything to the series. I hated the ending. I hated what the author did to Grayson and Toby. I feel like she ruined their characters completely. I know from reading some of your comments that a lot of you guys actually agree with me, so I don't know if it's a universal thing that we can all agree that this book was underwhelming. I know that there are going to be some people out there that absolutely love this book, and if you loved it, good for you. It just was severely underwhelming for me, and it definitely missed the mark, and I wish I had never read it. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, mainly because I enjoyed the first 2 books, but I could have probably given it a lower rating. Sorry. The next book that I read is also part of a series that I found to be very disappointing, and that is One of Us is Next. This is the second book in the One of Us is Lying series. It follows a second group of friends than the first book. They basically have to figure out who's behind this new truth or dare game that is exposing all of their deepest, darkest secrets. I felt like this book was such a disappointment because the truth or dare game wasn't really all that eventful. I feel like it wasn't all that important compared to everything that went down in the first book. I didn't really find myself rooting for any of the characters in this book. I didn't really connect with any of them. I didn't really like them compared to the first book that I actually loved all of the characters. Some of the characters, actually all of the characters from the first book, do make an appearance here and there in this book, which is really nice to see how they were able to move on after the aftermath of the first book. But this new group of friends I just didn't really like. I felt that they were kind of boring. The storyline in this book was pretty underwhelming as well compared to the first book. I also didn't really like the ending. I felt like the ending left a huge plot hole, and I know that there is a third book coming early next year, so maybe the author of this book is going to explore the ending a little bit more in the third and final book of the series. I'm not quite sure. And yeah, again, a very underwhelming book for me. I really loved the first one, so I was expecting to absolutely love this one, but it was just a letdown, unfortunately. With that being said, I would recommend this book if you read the first one because you might as well just finish out the series, in my opinion. And who knows, my opinion may be an unpopular one. Maybe you read the second book and absolutely loved it. I don't know, but it just wasn't for me. And there is a third book in the series coming very soon, so maybe that third book is going to redeem this book, and maybe that book is going to end the series on a very good note. Who knows? And the final book that I have here is As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This is another book that was a complete letdown for me. Oh my gosh, I saved the worst books I've read this month for the last part of this video, and I'm so sorry. I should have spread them out. This book is the third book in the Good Girls Guide to Murder series. It follows Pip, the main character, and instead of having to investigate someone's murder or someone's disappearance, in this book Pip is trying to figure out who is stalking her before they hurt her or her family. And I would have to say that, again, my expectations were super high because I loved the second book so much. The second book to me is the best book out of the entire series. This book felt like such a letdown because it was pretty slow. I kind of was bored throughout reading it. I read this book during a 24-hour reading challenge, and if I wasn't reading it for that challenge, I probably would have DNF'd it because I was so bored. And I feel like the twist was very predictable, which was also a disappointment when I got to the end. That's one of the reasons why I didn't really like the first book in the series, because I was able to predict the ending to that book fairly early on as well. I also don't agree with the ending of this book. If you read this book, then you understand where I'm coming from. I just don't think that two wrongs make it right, and I feel like Pip is definitely going to deal with a lot of guilt for what she did at the end of this book. That kind of killed the entire series for me, the fact that the author decided to end this book in that way. I don't want to give too much away in case you haven't read this book, but I just really didn't enjoy it. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I was being very generous because, again, I like the second book so much. I know that a lot of people love this book and a lot of people have given it 5 stars. I'm just not one of them, and I feel like the author could have taken this book in a completely different direction without having to ruin Pip's character, you know? Let me know if you read this book and what are your thoughts on the ending. Do you agree with the ending? I don't know. I'm so sorry, you guys. I know that a lot of you love that series. I just, again, wasn't a huge fan of it, unfortunately. I really want it to be. I tried to be a fan, but you like what you like and you hate what you hate, and I don't hate that series, I just didn't love it. Overall, I feel like September, again, was a really weird month for me. I was definitely in a reading slump. Hopefully October will be a better reading month for me, but that is pretty much it for today's video. Let me know in the comments below if you have read any of these books. Let me know your thoughts on them. Also, let me know your favorite book that you read in September. And that is pretty much it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you a part of my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.